Hmm. Well, hello again. I'm going to keep trying this video thing on Substack. It seems interesting. I'm not sure, how interesting I am, but I'm actually having fun. One of the things I'd like to do, besides filming myself talking while smoking, is I'd like to review or discuss some books that I find helpful. So I have one here. Hmm. If you hear a little bit of noise of running water in the background, I'm just filling my what's it called? Not septic tank. Mm, Water storage tank in my shop. Ran out this morning. I had her filled, and then we sprang a leak last week, and well, there you have it. But anyway, so it's 30 below, and I'm pumping water through a garden hose, probably 200 feet across the ground. The thing about water is if you keep it moving, it usually stays moving. Now, this book here, I don't know if you can read that. James B. Jordan, it's his commentary on the book of Judges, a practical and a theological commentary. I cannot recommend this work highly enough. I've preached through the book of Judges, and I recently finished. Now, this book is full of helpful things. One of the things that Jim Jordan has taught me to do, by reading his work and by listening to his lectures, is he's taught me how to take the Old Testament seriously and how to read it faithfully. So, in his introduction, he says something interesting. One of the best ways to communicate truth in such a way as to grip the hearts and minds of the hearer is by means of storytelling. The Bible is full of stories designed for just this purpose. The whole theology of storytelling could use a treatment in itself. In this book, however, it is my intention to illustrate such a theology rather than to write it systematically. God is himself the great storyteller. Being God, he can sovereignly superintend all events so as to bring his stories to life. His stories, this is key, his stories really happened. The fact that they are told as stories does not subtract one whit from their real historical character. Still, what gives them their thrilling power is not only that we know that they really happened in a certain year and at a certain place, but because they speak to us today. Why do good stories speak to us today? Because, as students of literature would say, they embody universal characteristics and deal with universal problems, hopes, fears, symbols, and so forth. This is exactly correct. Universal truths are not the same as abstract generalities, however. It is precisely in the specific events themselves that the most universal aspects of the stories are seen. This is great. And then he goes into a brief discussion of symbols and images in the Old Testament. Jim Jordan treats the Book of Judges, I think, um, with a good deal of reverence. Uh, I think too many fellows perhaps are a little flippant when they come to the scriptures, especially the Old Testament. It's a Marcionite tendency that we have in North America, in the evangelical kind of a world. We really don't like the Old Testament. We're New Testament Christians or some silly nonsense. He, like I said, he takes the book of Judges seriously. He treats it as prophetic. The book is full of types of Christ. It's not just moralisms or warnings, there's types. Now, a history that is a prophecy, that's an interesting category, one we're not used to. Now, there are universal tropes or ideas. You have the idea that if you worship false gods, God gives you over to the tyranny of those false gods. You know, lots of stuff about the image of God, lots of pictures of Christ, like Samson, for example, or Jephthah. Jephthah, who is often maligned, he's worth a good study. I once preached a sermon on, well, two sermons on Jephthah, defending his character against slander. So we have three questions that Jim Jordan wants to ask of the text. What is God's word, his promise and command? What is man's response? Is the second question. Rebellion or faithfulness. And then what is God's evaluation, his judgment or his blessing on the action taken? Now, sometimes the divine evaluation is implied, sometimes more explicit. So in the book of Judges, you have the patterns of creation, fall, decline, judgment, recreation. And one thing that is helpful to remember is that the book of Judges is setting up Samuel chapter 1. And Samuel, of course, is the great precursor to Saul, who's the great precursor to David. Now, which is keeping in line with the theme of the second son, right? So Seth is more righteous than Cain. Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated. Manasseh and Ephraim get switched in the blessings in Genesis 49, I believe. The judges are replaced by the kings. David replaces Saul. Christ is the second Adam. The second is greater than the first. Solomon's temple is greater than the tabernacle. Stuff like that. So that's another pattern. A pattern of maturity is also present. You go from the early judges period where it's the end of the conquest. They haven't settled down. They're fighting. And then towards the end of the book of Judges, you've got Samson provoking war with the Philistines, which Saul actually finishes. Remember the statement I believe it's in 1 Samuel, that there was hard fighting all the days of Saul? Samson started that. That was Samson's job. In Judges, it says when he went down to Timnah to find a wife, his parents did not know that it was from the Lord. He was looking to pick a fight. Samson and the Lord went to a wedding to pick a fight. Interesting. Very interesting. Overtones of the crucifixion, perhaps. A wedding to pick a fight. So there is a bunch of things. One of the interesting stories from the book of Judges happens right off the hop. And this is a story I think that is often overlooked in the popular imagination of this book. Now, it's in chapter 1. Chapter 1. And Caleb said, this is from verse 12, he who attacks Kiriath Sefer and captures it, I will give him Achsah, my daughter, for a wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, captured it. And he gave him Achsah, his daughter, for a wife. When she came to him, she urged him to ask her father for a field. And when she dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Give me a blessing, since you have set me in the land of the Negeb. Give me also springs of water." And Caleb gave her upper springs and the lower springs. Now, this beautiful little vignette, it's a story about a wedding, right? We just talked about weddings and fighting. There's something about warfare in marriage. Now, Chesterton once quipped that marriage was a war to the death that no man of honor should ever refuse. A funny guy. But it's also, to be rightly understood, as warfare against Satan, against death, against his works and effects. This again goes back to Genesis 3, the crushing of the heel. Hosea, what does he require? A godly offspring. And then Paul, in Ephesians, that the marriage is all about Christ and his church. Now, Caleb is providing a good husband for his daughter. That's one of the things that's going on in this story. Othniel, of course, becomes one of the first judges. He and his judgeship is mentioned in chapter 3. He defeated a Mesopotamian king, Cushan Rishathaim, who came into the land to plunder. So Caleb is providing a wife for a good judge, a man who will become a good judge. He's providing a good husband for his daughter. Now, if that doesn't sound like God the Father providing the church for Christ and providing Christ for the church, you're not reading this story correctly, sir. Now, she goes to her father, which again is a thing that the church does. We go to our Heavenly Father in prayer and we ask for blessings. She asks for springs of water, and Caleb gives her springs of water. The water, of course, being a symbol often associated with the Holy Spirit and baptism. It's a baptismal image. It's the gospel in a vignette, and it's high romance. I mean, this man, he overcame evil to win and woo and secure a wife. Marvelous. It's high romance. It's every romance from the medieval tradition. So there's a lot in here. We often talk when discussing Judges about the failure of Israel to finish the job in the conquest of the land. This is a big theme, one that we fail to learn every day. We fail to finish the job. Whatever the job is, we leave it undone, and then we have to deal with it later, right? I had this 2 weeks ago when my water line to my house froze off because I failed to complete the job in the summertime when it was warm. Totally forgot. 100% my fault, right? We do this. We do this. This is human nature. In warfare, spiritual warfare, or physical warfare, pursuit is one of the key principles. You pursue until you're done. We fail to do this. Israel fails to pursue the Canaanites properly, and they fail to pursue righteousness. They are unfaithful. And so then God gives them into the hand of their oppressors, and their oppressors are representative of the gods that they're worshiping. So you'll notice that as they worship different gods, they get handed off to them, to the people who worship those gods. And it's always oppression. One of the things that we are to learn is that false worship and the worship of false gods is oppression. So when you see that happening in your culture, when you see that false worship happening, understand that this is what's in store for your culture. It's also, I think, in my opinion anyway, that the worship itself is part of the judgment. Yeah, because what a horrible thing to worship demons. What good is there in that? Now we have some great stories. Ehud, the left-handed assassin. There's some great details in there about him burying the sword into Eglon's belly and the fat closing over it. I love this stuff. It preaches very, very um, marvelously. I really had a lot of fun with that one. Deborah and Barak, again, another fantastic story. This is what happens when men become unmanly, right? Then their glory passes to a woman, right? The glory of Barak, glory which he should have had for being the war captain of Israel, passes to Jael, the wife of Heber. Now, Jael, interesting character. She she offers milk to Sisera. Jael offers milk to Sisera. Now, in the Pentateuch, the Promised Land was described as the land of milk and honey. So she's giving Sisera milk. And this is a judgment on Sisera and a deliverance for Israel. Now, the prophetess Deborah in the same story, her name means bee, like a honeybee. So milk and honey refer to judgment and deliverance. And we come to that again later with Samson, with the lion that he shredded with his hands, right? Out of the mouth of the eater came something sweet, right? And that's judgment on the Philistines and deliverance for Israel. Milk and honey. Mm. And then David later, he becomes the Uber Samson. When he comes to fight Goliath, he says to Saul, I've killed many lions and I've killed bears. Right? He is more Samson than Samson. He's actually, and he brings cheese. He's bringing cheese to his brothers in the army, um, which is a milk product, milk and honey. Jonathan eats the honey, excuse me, in the pursuit of the enemy, um, milk and honey, and also a failure to pursue by his father Saul. A failure that David rectifies in the battle with Goliath. They pursue the enemy all the way to the gates of Ekron and Gath, right? So all the way down to the coast, modern day Gaza. The so that there's a lot of marvelous things in here. You've got Gideon. He's threshing his grain in a wine press. Now we're a little far removed from these kinds of things. We don't typically thresh grain. You combine it nowadays, I guess. So the threshing is all done in the machine. But back in the day, you used to put your sheaves on a floor and then either drag a wheel over them or thresh them with a flail. Um, and then you'd take a pitchfork and toss the threshings into the air, and then the chaff gets blown away, and the heavier grains settle. Then you scoop them up with a shovel. So you need to be doing this on top of a hill, right? Where the temple gets later built is on a threshing floor up on the top of Mount Zion. Gideon's in a wine press, which is not on top of a hill. He is committing tax fraud, tax evasion. The so one of the things that we learn is that when Philistines call it tax evasion, it's not potentially. Hmm. Let he who has ears to hear hear. Now you also have this marvelous story of faith. The angel comes to Gideon and says, "O man of valor," and Gideon's looking around. Who are you talking to? You're not talking to me. I am in a wine press threshing grain, trying not to get robbed. Right? That's not valor. Well, it is of a sort, but God doesn't pick Gideon because he's so awesome. He picks him because he's so small. He's humble. Gideon says, "I am the least of my tribe. My tribe is the least in Israel. Who am I?" Right? And he's not wrong. And then later, God picks 300 of the men, not the many thousands that showed up to fight. Again, demonstrating his own power. Jonathan is a man who had learned this lesson by meditating on this book. When he says to his armor bearer, let us go up to them, that maybe, God can deliver by many or by few. Let us advance against the enemy. Jonathan had meditated on the scriptures. And then Gideon pursues. Gideon does not fail to pursue, at least in the limited sense of his combat. The first king of Israel is also Abimelech, but he's not legitimate. That's a very interesting story. And his head gets crushed. He's a serpent. The that matters. Jephthah is an illegitimate son, an outlaw. He is cut off from his brothers, from the inheritance. You got overtones of Joseph, the patriarch. Yeah, there's a lot of good there. Oh, yeah, and I hear Walter coming in. Or maybe. Yep, there's Walter. Oh, there's Walter. Oh, no, you got the cat's in too. Walter and Liam are here. Now, boys, don't go out that back door, please. I'm pumping water, okay? I'd rather he was in there. Okay. I'm recording again.
Sweet.
Yeah. Say hi.
Hi. Peekaboo.
Peekaboo, yeah. So I'll put this on Substack after I'm done recording.
Sweet.
Yeah. But we're talking about the Book of Judges.
I like that one.
Yeah. And then we get to Samson. Samson takes up quite a bit of the Book of Judges. We've already mentioned him. He has a weakness for women. He's like Israel. He is a representation of the nation. He has trouble with self-control and foreign women. Now, the first marriage that he tried to contract to the woman in Timnah was from the Lord, which is, again, this is a foreshadowing of the Gentile inclusion in the promise to Abraham, which we see fulfilled in the New Covenant. So there's something going on there. He's offering salvation to this woman and to her family, and they get because her loyalty is not to her husband, to her Lord, but to her father's people. She gets consumed in the fire. This is an important warning. We're supposed to learn from her. Negative example, what not to do. The book of Hebrews talks about falling away from that which we know to the old thing, right? Whatever the old way was, whether it's pagan worship or the case of the book of Hebrews, old temple worship as opposed to Christian worship. It's not good. It is never good to go backwards. But Samson, he defeats the Philistines. He's got his famous incident with the jawbone, where he composes a poem. He composes, I think, the first rock song. With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men. He's punning. He's making a song. It's great. If you're going to slay God's enemies, you should write a song about it, right, Walter?
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah. Now, the chapter 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, these events happen very early in the book. So the book of Judges actually jumps out of the chronological order after Samson. And the final chapters actually occur during the first generation after Joshua. And we know this because Moses' grandson is the Levite involved with the partial tribe of the Danites in their false worship. And the incident where the concubine gets chopped up and sent via post to everyone happens at about the same time, like in that same generation. And we know this because Phineas is still the high priest, and it's Phineas who is the man in charge of the assembly of the people where they decide what to do. We also know this because Saul, who becomes king in 1 Samuel, is from the tribe of Benjamin that have been decimated in that civil war. And it's been a few generations. Like the tribe of Benjamin exists as a tribe by the time we get to 1 Samuel. So that's another time marker. But the book of Judges really is a marvelous part of the scriptures, teaching us many things about Christ, about ourselves, about the church and the world, theological truths about pursuit and finishing the job, and faithfulness, and things to be expected from unfaithfulness. And Jim Jordan writes a very helpful commentary about it. I commend it to you all very heartily. He's easy to read. It's really grand. So if you have Judges, if you're a preacher and you're preaching through Judges, if you have that coming up in your preaching rotation, check Jim Jordan out. And if you're a layman and you don't prepare sermons for your church, check it out anyway. It will help deepen your understanding of what is going on in this excellent part of our Holy Scriptures. Anyway, thank you for watching, and the Lord bless you.